Okay, question for you all. Who here is using Node and NPM? Great. How many of you have ever heard of NPM shrinkwrap? That's what I thought. How many of those who have heard of it are using it? Okay, so I'm going to add value to your lives today. Very simply, here's the problem. You have a package.json file, you're specifying your dependencies, and you specify with some sort of semantic version. Okay, any version of Express 3, that's going to be fine. Render's a library, we use it. Sony, that's fine, we're good. Do an npm install, npm picks out particular versions. What matches this that is most recent in the registry, installs it. And then 3 months later, when you go to ship things to production, what happens? Explosion. Stuff doesn't work. And really what's going on here is you've got this nice little package, and all of those dependencies, something has changed. If you go back here, I screwed up my slides, but you have 3.2.21 rather than 3.20, and that difference made this happen. Now, if you're lucky, this explosion happens when you go to install. You set up your app, it's going. Something breaks, and you say, oh shoot, roll back, we're good, figure out what's going to happen. If you're unlucky, what happens is they didn't quite follow semantic versioning, or some version of some method you depend on breaks, and it's live in your production and breaking as you go along. So this should be easy to fix, right? We take these very vague dependencies that we had, we nail them down to exactly what got installed, 3.0.2, 0.5.2, etc. And yet still, when you go to ship, it explodes. What's going on? Well, NPM has a tree-based dependency management. So even though I have just nailed down every dependency in my package.json, one of those packages I'm including, in this case render, also has a dependency set in its package.json, and it has not specified this. It's saying semantic versioning, version 3 is fine. Unless every NPM package that you depend on uses exact package versions, your builds are not reproducible. This could bite you at any time. This could bite you when you ship to production. This could bite you when you bring up a new developer. This could bite you when you're trying to debug this thing that's coming from your QA department and it doesn't reproduce quite right on your machine, and then when you trace it down, it's something 3 layers deep is using a different version. So what's the solution? NPM shrinkwrap is built into NPM, and it locks down your entire tree of dependencies to the current installed versions. If you come from the Ruby world and you're familiar with gemfile and gemfile.lock, this is almost exactly that. It's analyzing your installed tree, saying, okay, all of those fuzzy semantic versions translated to this version, this version, this version. I'm going to write a file, npm-shrinkwrap.json, and that will be the source of truth. And when you do an npm install, if that file is there, it will look to that before it looks to your package.json. And so my conclusion is go to every repository that you're working on if you care. Write npm shrinkwrap, or type npm shrinkwrap, add the generated file to your Git repository, and save yourself a heck of a lot of pain down the road. Yes?
Does that actually do, so the other problem is that sometimes NPM itself has gone down, like NPM the service. Does this actually help you with that, or does this really just...
So if the registry is down, this will not help you. This is just giving you version specificities. Well, actually, let me clarify. It does resolve potentially where you recorded those from. So it will say, okay, I said this, but I pulled it from this location, and here's the URL. So it may actually, I haven't tried that, but it may actually still work if the registry is down, because it records, here's my sort of canonical URL, but here's the URL I actually installed from. Yes? Yes. So that is a solution that you could use.
You really want it over
If you really want frozen, it actually is still not perfect, because if you, for example, are building on a Mac environment and a Linux environment, if you have any node modules that have native components, you've just broken your app. So you can do that. It has different sets of pros and cons. Yeah.
Is there any way of storing what it was before in all of the collections packaged in JSON? Fixing it, nailing it down, but keeping a comparison, because there may be some, you may want to bring the whole thing up a notch if somebody fixes it.
Yeah.
There's a major problem in Mongoose, and you want to go back through there and notch things up.
So you can absolutely update your npm shrinkwrap later. So what this will do is this will say, here's the set of installed, lock it down to that. Now, say you want to update a particular package. I don't know if you run explicitly npm update blah rather than npm install, if it'll check the shrinkwrap or not, so that would be a good thing to check. But at worst case scenario, move your shrinkwrap out of the way, just update that one package, make sure everything's all good, and re-shrinkwrap. Yes? It's a good question. I don't know, but it should be very easy to find out. Yes?
And I would count as another environment, you can run your own debug. Anything like that?
Yeah, so npm allows you to have additional registries that you can specify, I believe, in the top of your package.json. You also can point any particular package to just git URL or something similar like that. And actually, an odd note, if for some reason you happen to be running old versions of npm and you happen to be accessing branches on GitHub directly via GitHub, the file that npm shrinkwrap writes in versions like 1.20 or 1. Something old is not readable by that same version of npm. You have to go and hack it. You shouldn't ever be on that old of an npm version, but we did run into that problem at work where we had to manually override. It was writing URLs that it did not know how to read. Any other questions? All right, so yes, npm shrinkwrap, do your future self a favor. It'll get you and you'll spend a day saying, what the heck is going on? This was just working. And you do this, you just save yourself a lot of headaches. Yes? You could, however, you want your installed modules in your CI to be the same as you were working with in development. So you probably want to move it back the step so that if you're installing new modules in development, you're shrink wrapping those so that you know your CI is getting the same state. All right, I think that's it.
So at the end of our monthly meetings, we do this thing where we go around and we have people that are new or maybe haven't been here in a long time introduce themselves. And then we have people that are looking for work